Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in. I'm Michael Manfredi,
And I'm Patrick Bosk.
and we're here for episode 1, season 1 of our new podcast, working title, Tattoo Talk, or
Potentially Patty and Mike on the mic.
Patty and Mike on the mic. Hey.
But let us know your thoughts. If you guys have better ideas, feel free to include them in the comments. We'll definitely be going through the comments, trying to find a good sticking title for this podcast. But this is what it is in the meantime, I suppose.
And thank you for being here from the beginning. If you're watching, it means a lot to us already.
Definitely. So a few things that we want to discuss.
Well, first, let's shout out to Low Life Speedworks.
Yeah, and Florida as fuck.
Rocking the shirts today. Good friends of ours, Custom Motorcycle Shop, and Florida as fuck is just a clothing brand, but both really solid dudes, and they're out here in Orlando doing some really cool stuff. So we're happy to be repping them today.
Yep. Also, really cool people. If you ever get a chance, check out their Instagram pages. They're definitely some cool people to follow as well.
Low Life Speedworks, Florida as fuck.
Hell yeah.
Today we're talking about how and why we got started in tattooing. I've been tattooing for 7 years now. Patrick is my apprentice. How long have you been apprenticing so far, Patrick?
I'm probably right at about maybe I want to say 5-month mark.
5 months into your apprenticeship, so just about halfway through.
Definitely, and I think that gives us a pretty good perspective, just because I'm someone who, fairly recently was interested in getting into tattooing, and I'm, obviously learning from a guy who's been around the block for about 7 years, and I'm sure within the tattoo community that's, probably a really good amount of time to be able to get I'm sure a good sense of everything.
It's a decent amount of time. I was actually just talking about it earlier today with my client that I consider the 10-year mark to be kind of the milestone for being well versed in this industry, and I think a lot of other artists would probably consider that as well.
Yeah, I can see that.
But 7 years, I've learned a lot. I've been able to tattoo around the country, different states, different studios, work with very talented artists, tattoo artists and traditional artists, fine artists, photographers, and I've learned a lot of skills, and I try to take every little thing that I learn and just apply it somehow to my overall art.
Yeah, makes perfect sense.
But today we're going to talk a little bit about how and why we got started in tattooing. So I was actually in college. I was going to Norwalk Community College in Norwalk, Connecticut, and I was in the associates program for graphic design.
How old were you?
When I started college, I was 19. I took a year between high school and college. I was 19 when I started college.
Okay.
So I was in the associates program for graphic design, which incorporated a lot of traditional classes as well. I took drawing 1 and 2, figure drawing, painting, color theory, sculpture, art history of graphic design. I took some media classes as well, as far as like multimedia and just media in general, video and whatnot. So my experience in graphic design, I've always been interested in art, and graphic design was kind of where I wanted to go freshly out of high school. And while I was in college, I met a kid, and he wasn't an artist. He wasn't in any of the art programs. I met him kind of through the grapevine, and we were talking one day. He's like, "Oh, you're an artist. That's cool. I have a tattoo kit at home that I bought for my ex-girlfriend. She left it at my house when we broke up. I'm not an artist. I've just got this thing sitting here. If you ever want to come out and tattoo yourself or mess around with it, man, feel free." And so I took him up on that offer. I went to his house one day and rolled up my pant leg and put a stencil on my thigh, and I pretty much almost instantly fell in love with tattooing right then. Just the idea of, I already had a fascination with tattoos. I already had 4 or 5 at the time that I got at a studio that was called the Raven's Nest in Norwalk, Connecticut. That studio is no longer open. But I had already had a few tattoos, so I was already fascinated with them, and from the moment I did that first tattoo, I just loved the idea of being able to create this artwork permanently on my body anytime I wanted.
Mm-hmm.
And that was really kind of the spark that set off my tattooing career. I spent the next couple of months regrettably and disgracefully tattooing out of the house. A lot of tattoo artists start this way, scratching on myself, on my close friends and family. And every time I would do a new piece on myself or take some pictures of some pieces that I did, I would go down to the Raven's Nest and show the artists there, like, oh, look what I did. And they were like, man, what the fuck are you doing? Like you're messing people's skin up. This is permanent. It's, to be taken seriously. And I think at that moment I realized that I should take it a little more seriously. I said, well, I understand that it is serious and it is permanent, and it's something that I would really love to do. And I know that I'm, you guys have only known me for a little while. But we get along great. I love you guys, and this is what I want to do. And quite frankly, I'm going to continue to do it, and I'm going to try to push myself and learn. And it would be great if I could learn from you.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess they saw promise in what I was doing with no prior training, and saw promise in my artwork, and maybe thought that I would be an asset to the industry, and decided to take me on and kind of show me the ropes. I had a very traditional tattooer that was a mentor for me.
Mm-hmm.
He had been tattooing for about 15, 17 years at the time when he took me on, and all coil machines. This was before rotaries were even starting to become extremely popular the way they are now. So I learned on coil machines, learned on steel tubes, and I did a lot of the grunt work around the shop, typical apprenticeship. These guys were a little bit more laid back and relaxed on me, and I definitely appreciated that. We had built a rapport before I started my apprenticeship, and they had kind of carried that into the apprenticeship and kind of more treated me like the person I was before I started apprenticing, instead of like really bullying me,
Mm-hmm.
which was nice. So that's just a little bit of background about how I got
Mm-hmm.
into tattooing.
Mm-hmm.
A little touch on why.
Really
Sure.
quickly too, just because you brought up a really good point, and I mentioned this because I've talked to a lot of artists in the past years recently, and it seems like something that you'd brought up is something that I hear almost across the board, as well as when I've done a lot of research online, is that a lot of people do start on themselves. They'll pick up these kits. They'll start tattooing either themselves, their friends, sheets of rubber. What are your thoughts in regards to anyone who might find themselves in your same position where they want to get interested in it, but what do you advise someone in your exact same position should do prior to like tattooing themselves and their friends? And
looking back, I probably wouldn't have gotten my start in tattooing if I hadn't done it the way I did.
Mm-hmm.
So I can't rightfully say that you shouldn't be tattooing yourself with no experience. I mean, because I fucking did it.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? That would be the pot calling the kettle black.
Yeah.
And but I really would like to stress that I felt like the first year or 2 years worth of tattoos that I put out were not quality tattoos.
Mm-hmm.
And it's because I didn't take the time to really learn and build up the skill and study before actually getting into it, before just jumping into it. And honestly, the studio that I apprenticed at, they allowed me to begin tattooing on myself and on my friends almost immediately from the start of the apprenticeship. Again, as I mentioned, they kind of took me on as a friend apprentice as well. So, and looking back, the first year or 2 years of tattoos that I put out, I'm not proud of.
Mm-hmm.
There's not a single tattoo in the first 2 years that I put out that's still in my portfolio.
Mm-hmm.
So, I really, sometimes I do wish that I had taken it more seriously before I jumped into it and studied more, read all the books and all the resources possible before actually trying to apply it. And that's kind of something that I try to carry forth into the apprenticeship, the mentor side of the apprenticeship that I offer now, which is to really hone in on the individual skills that add up to tattooing, and not just try to learn all of them at once.
Yeah, makes total sense. My follow-up question is, how did you get such a good-looking beard? What did you do to achieve that?
You know, I would love to tell you that I have some secret cream or secret method or something to having this amazing beard. And I know it sounds maybe a little douchey and arrogant to say that I woke up like this, but I don't do anything for my beard, man.
Right on.
I wash it with Dove for Men Plus Care body wash and shampoo.
Well, it's showing.
I wash it once a day. That's all I do, and I brush it. I brush it in the morning and I brush it at night.
Right on.
Yeah. For the aspiring beard grower, I don't know how to help you, Pat. Maybe some sort of balm or massaging some sort of oil onto the face, and if you focus really hard, just it'll grow.
Maybe that's what we could potentially call this podcast, is the beard in the stash.
Beard in the stash. That's a good name. Let us know what you think of that one. So, Pat, let's talk about how you became my apprentice. Tell me from your perspective, kind of how you got to where we are already 5 months in.
Definitely. I'll even start a little prior to that, like kind of
Yeah.
show where my initial interest, started, I suppose. So, I mean, I'm sure a lot of people have even been in this category, potentially most of our viewers, but even before, I mean, ever since even, as far back as I can remember, freshman year of high school, I've always been infatuated with tattooing. The idea of being a tattoo artist, getting tattoos myself. Just because I grew up, I don't want to say that I was artistically inclined by any means. I just really liked doing artwork, all different types of mediums, not just drawing and painting, but I was obsessed with graffiti art. I mean, that was probably the number one thing that I was into. And where I grew up, that wasn't too common of a thing. I'm from the Florida Keys, by the way, and if you've ever been there, you'd probably say, I didn't know you could live in the Florida Keys, because it's just a very small place. But regardless of my surroundings, I was obsessed with all types of artwork, specifically graffiti artwork. So I was really, heavily involved in, not trying to become a graffiti artist by any means, but I guess more specifically just what it took to be able to create graffiti art. It completely blew my mind, captivated me. It wasn't until I moved to Orlando that I started getting bigger pieces, and with those bigger pieces that I was getting, I was having longer conversations with, very relatively popular artists in the area. A few of them were starting to become friends of mine, just by actively visiting the shops. And even during this period of time, I didn't really think too much about becoming a tattoo artist. I was just, I guess I was just a fan of the artwork, and then sure enough, I finally moved out to Portland, Oregon. This was several years ago. Had a few conversations with some tattoo artists out there who kind of convinced me that it's not too impossible to be able to become an artist. Although, I'd been obsessed with artwork my entire life, I guess I never 100% believed in my artistic abilities to be able to actually physically, put something on someone that would stay on there for potentially forever. So it was never really a full consideration, more like something that I just really admired or was impressed with. And with that being said, finally after having a few conversations with some friends out in Portland, I realized, maybe it was within my realm of grasp, I guess you could say. And at that point in my head, I was maybe 26 at the time, I finally, for the first time, considered the option of becoming a tattoo artist. But I knew that there would be a pretty big, pretty long way to go before I could actually solidify and guarantee that happens. And if you've ever, I'm sure a lot of artists as well as people who are just tattoo enthusiasts are watching this, but regardless, I'm sure you're aware that, to become an artist, you don't just, walk into a studio. You've got to have a lot of criteria that's, being met. And you also have to have someone who's willing to mentor you and considers you, worth the time that they're going to have to invest in you themselves to be able to succeed, because no one wants to, spend time with someone who they don't truly believe in. So with that being said, I knew that it was going to be difficult to be able to find that person. that shop. I just moved back to Orlando. A lot of the artists who I became friends with at this point had either moved back home, moved out of the country, were in different places. So I knew I was kind of starting from scratch again. And then finally, and call it maybe positive thinking, law of attraction, if you will, but through a friend of a friend who I, worked with, I happened, pure happenstance, met Mike at a gallery that I was having at his studio. And, even at that time, I wasn't considering that would be a sure shot or a guarantee or even likely. I thought of it more as kind of like me getting my, talking to some new artists in the area, trying to get a feel for what to expect and how difficult it would be. Thankfully enough, after our first couple of conversations, Mike thankfully believed in me enough to be able to give me the opportunity that I was not only looking for but wasn't expecting, just because of how difficult I was. I knew it would be, and so I feel like I got really lucky. I was very blessed by this opportunity. We've grown a lot as not only artists but as business-minded individuals since we've met 5 months ago. So a lot of positive things have come out of it. But yeah, I guess essentially that's kind of how I my full story of how I started out and where I am now today. 5 months later, come a long way.
Pat, were you surprised at what? Let me ask. Okay, so let me rephrase the question. Were there any surprises, or have there been any surprises since starting your apprenticeship? Anything that you didn't expect?
Oh yeah, entirely. And again, this is one of those things where I'm sure a lot of people who were even potentially listening are aware of a lot of the industry's I guess not like negative stories, but there's a lot of people out there who became tattoo artists and have stories, horror stories, I should say, of the difficulties becoming an artist and growing as an artist within the industry, and how a lot of shops can be a hit or a miss. You're either going to find your next family or you're going to find your next headache, and I was completely terrified of that. So I guess I was just surprised. I didn't think that I was going to get lucky right away. But not only that, but I was just very worried, very fearful going into it, because I don't know if you are able to see what I am, but this guy's a fucking brick wall.
I'm a teddy bear.
A rather intimidating individual. So I feel like the camera might not even do it justice. But so, it was just one of those things where I knew that I was going to most likely have to hop around from shop to shop, and I also wanted to be able to get to know all the artists, so I kind of knew that it was going to be a long challenge in front of me, getting tattoos from specific shops and kind of feeling it out and, trying to do what I considered to be the correct and right way to becoming an artist. Again, it was a surprise to answer Mike's question. I didn't think that, right away I was going to find this shop, and I'm glad that I did, because, out of 10 or 15 shops that I could have potentially gone to, I feel like this was guaranteed to be the best one that I could have gone to. And oh, that's Zach. I thought that was Ian. That's too funny. And there's Ian.
Yeah. That's all right.
By the way, the other tattoo apprentice, Zach is
Zach
here.
Haynes.
Zach Haynes is here. Yeah.
Yeah, you can let him in.
He's trying to come.
We're currently filming in the studio and gallery here in Oviedo. And we have someone entering the studio now.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. But if Zach wants to hop in this, he's totally welcome to.
I'll let you all do your thing. I just came back to waste some time.
Right on. Well, we were just about to talk about what tattooing means to us. And just in general, tattooing, the tattoo industry, what tattooing as an action and what tattoos on us kind of mean to us. I think it's a good general topic for our first episode. Mm-hmm. So I guess for me, tattooing first and foremost has been the biggest blessing of my life. It means that I can provide for my family, doing something that it's such a beautiful and masterful craft, and it really does hold such a high regard and held in high regard, and has such a a profound meaning for a lot of people who wear their tattoos. And so for me, that's the first thing that comes to mind is just how lucky I am and how blessed I am to be able to produce artwork on a daily basis for someone else who, might not even know me. It might be their first time meeting me, and they see my artwork and they trust me enough to do something on them forever. And that is just, I gotta say, really the deepest meaning of trust, and that's a great feeling. And I think after having tattooed for 7 years, sometimes on a day-to-day basis I might lose touch with that or might not keep it in the front of my mind. But every once in a while I'll step back and I think, it really is, I'm not saving lives or anything, but I'm touching lives. I'm definitely, I've helped people overcome, self-harm. I've helped people overcome legitimate fears of needles. I've helped people overcome the loss of loved ones, and some of those things are just the most, I guess, magical part of tattooing.
Mm-hmm. Rewarding.
Yeah, it really is. It really is.
Mm-hmm.
What do tattoos, or the opportunity of being a tattoo artist, what does that mean to you? What kind of feeling does that invoke in you?
Of course, yeah. Something I wanted to say is, obviously, Mike, you've been tattooing, not only 7 years, but thousands of people. I haven't started officially tattooing yet. Still in the apprenticeship phase. But with that being said, something that I realized earlier on, even prior to high school, I always wanted to be an artist in some way. And anyone who's ever been an artist or desired to be an artist is fully aware that there's a lot of challenges and struggles ahead of them if they want to figure out how to be able to make money as an artist doing the type of art that they love doing. And even after graduating, immediately I went to a college to be able to learn how to become a designer, because I was very worried about not being able to find any lucrative types of careers as a fine arts major. I saw the struggles in that, and I knew that the graphic design community was growing at a pretty fast, alarming rate. So I wanted to hop on that as quickly as possible, because I knew that it would be the most realistic option for me. But even as a graphic designer, I found that I was obsessed with and just loved the projects that allowed me to be able to create stuff organically by hand. So that fine arts desire was definitely still there. It was the passion behind the graphic design. And while being a graphic designer, which I still currently am, and it's what allows me to be able to have enough free time to be able to be in the studio. So it was a right career choice, and the beauty of it was that I saw that while doing these projects, I loved anything that allowed me to, because not everything does, obviously. I would say the predominant amount of my work is usually just a bunch of mouse clicks and downloads and copies and just so on and so forth. And with that being said, I found that in my spare time, I was drawing still, I was painting, I was obsessed with that. So being able to transition from being a graphic designer to a tattoo artist I kind of consider it like my golden ticket almost. I feel like I found the end goal that I was looking for, and it happened by pure happenstance. But I finally get to actually draw stuff organically, do everything by hand. I'm not typing up files all day anymore. I'm now finally actually producing stuff that I consider to be beautiful, and knowing that someone also considers the artwork that I'm producing to be creative in some way or impressive in some way, and they want to actually feature it on themselves is not only like the definition of rewarding, but it just sounds like what an honorable thing to be able to do, because you're definitely gonna leave something on these people that they're gonna remember for the rest of their lives, and they're gonna be showing off to everyone. And I guess it's a very kind of, as you said, it's a very rewarding, touching thing that I'm looking forward to getting into. And I already know there's going to be a lot of stories to come that I'm sure I'll be, over the next several years, becoming involved with, kind of like the ones you were talking about going through over the past 7 years.
Pat, I would like to say that your drawings and your drawing style have developed well. I'm definitely impressed and like the work that you've been putting out since you started the apprenticeship. And I would even wear a couple of the pieces that you've drawn up just in your free time, just for fun. So I think that you're definitely on the right track, and I appreciate the work that you're putting in and the attention to detail in your work, and I think that's why you'll be an asset to the tattoo industry as well.
Definitely.
Look out for this guy, Patrick Bosque, coming at you. A couple of years, he's going to be taking home awards at conventions for some best original color pieces. I think.
I mean, I hope so. It would be pretty cool to win an award as a tattoo artist.
Now we're going to take a little time to talk about some personal tattoos on us, and tattoos that hold a lot of meaning for us, and maybe about the artists that did them or the story behind them.
Sure. Yeah, definitely. I guess I'll go first. So, I've got a lot of tattoos. I could express a lot of stories about a lot of them, but I guess the funniest tattoo that I have would be I'm not gonna get up and show it, but it's on the back of my calf. It says in calligraphy, very nicely done too by Justin over at Chicago Tattoo here in Orlando. Very nice guy, by the way. I don't know if he's still over there or not, but he was a really awesome tattoo artist to get a design by. But essentially, it's a calligraphy piece on the back of my calf that says Margaritaville.
Nice.
Keep in mind, I'm from the Florida Keys, grew up with Jimmy Buffett, but the reason behind the piece was essentially I had gone in there with a buddy of mine who was just moved to Orlando, Florida, DJ Hennessy, shout out. He was looking to get a tattoo that day for whatever reason. I'm not entirely sure what the premise was behind it, but he just really wanted to get a tattoo. He didn't know any artists, and I had been aware of Justin's artwork for like a little bit, so I recommended him because of his calligraphy work specifically. So we went over there, and the funny thing about the story, or I guess when we got there, was that as soon as we got there, I realized that Hennessy didn't have any tattoo in mind. He just kind of spontaneously wanted to get a tattoo. So we're in the shop, Justin's available, and Hennessy turns to me and he says, "What should I get?" And I'm like, "Oh, I don't know, off the top of my head. I guess you could do, some sort of Florida piece, something related to Florida." So he got the outline of the state of Florida. He got something that said over it, some sort of piece, calligraphy piece going over it. I'm not entirely sure what it said off the top of my head. This was some time ago, probably about 9 years ago, I would say, maybe even 10. And then after that, he said, "Hey, Pat, since you came with me and you picked up my piece, you essentially came up with it, now I get to pick out something for you."
Oh, man.
And I said, "All right, let's do it." Of course, I'm not going to say no to a free tattoo. So he picked out Margaritaville for me because he thought that I was from Key West, which I'm not. I'm from Key Largo. But I got it anyway because I love Jimmy Buffett. And I guess the cool thing about the piece was that every time ever since I've gone back to, or I guess ever gone to Margaritaville in the first place, being that there's one down in Key West, there's one in Orlando, I think there's a few others, I've gotten free margaritas every single time I've gone. I always walk in, I always say to a waiter, "Hey, can you speak to the manager?" Manager comes out and I said, "Last time I was in here, you guys told me if I got Margaritaville tattooed on me, I got free margaritas." The manager
Did
would
somebody
always
tell you could do this?
No, this was just me one night,
Just you
drunkenly
fucking
in
around?
Key West. Me and my buddies had way too many beers doing the Duval Crawl in Key West, if you happen to know what that is. And we ended at Margaritaville, where I came up with the idea, and it worked so successfully. I mean, we got both 2 margaritas out of it each, which they charge pretty expensively for those, but it worked great. I continued doing it. It has not failed me once.
Nice.
Not once. So I don't do it very often, but when a manager at this restaurant's told that someone got a tattoo because of them, they almost feel like, okay, well,
Let's give him a drink.
let's give him a
Give him
drink.
a margarita. The guy's got Margaritaville on his leg.
Yeah, so 10 out of 10, I'd recommend it. If you ever want to get free food or drinks, tattoo that food or drink on you.
You get the Applebee's logo.
And they'll feel bad for you. But yeah, for a free tattoo, I got a lot of free drinks out of it. I can't complain. So it's by far my favorite tattoo.
That's your favorite tattoo. Nice. Okay. All right. I guess my favorite tattoo, I'd have to go with this one right here in the palm of my hand. It's my favorite tattoo for 2 reasons. One, I really, really love the location on my body. This tattoo is done by Teeny Tattoo, or Keisha. She currently tattoos at a studio in Bend, Oregon.
Nice.
And this was done here in Orlando when we worked together. I've had this tattoo for 4 years, maybe a little longer now. A lot of people with palm tattoos, they don't typically heal out well. This was done with a stippling technique, which actually keeps it, obviously keeps it looking solid for years. So I really love the location of this tattoo. I love how it's placed in the palm of my hand. Perfect placement. And what this is it's a band logo. It's the band Touche Amore, and they're a hardcore band from California. And the logo, quite literally, if you turn it upside down and get rid of this part here is a T and an A for Touche Amore. But when you turn it, this is the way it's displayed. These almost look like road lines, going off in the distance, driving off on the highway. And what that logo means to me, along with their music, or kind of the connection that I made to it, was to keep looking forward, keep moving forward. And this is kind of me, my reminder to do that. It's constantly reminding me to have that motivation, that driving force to keep pushing forward in every endeavor in tattooing and in life in general. So that's probably my favorite tattoo. I really love the location of it also. It's a cool spot, and I'm happy to have this palm tattoo because a lot of people go through the pain and time of getting their palm tattooed, and then it just falls out. So I'm very happy that mine turned out solid.
Definitely.
Yeah. I think we're gonna talk about some upcoming events here at the studio, and maybe some projects that we're working on. Patrick and I are both entrepreneurs as well. Tattooing is definitely our passion and the thing that we pursue the most, but we both have a strong business mindset as well. We have another podcast, if you want to tune into that one as well. It's called Craft Fridays is the title. I think we're pretty solid on that title.
I think we're probably going to stick with the Craft Fridays,
It's a good title. We pop the tops on some craft beers and talk about our crafts. So, I do tattooing, and I'll be on that podcast kind of sporadically here and there. Patrick has another business. We have another business partner that's on that podcast as well. And that's on Fridays, Craft Fridays. Check that out. So I guess that's one of the projects that we're also working on right now, and obviously starting up this podcast.
Yeah, of course. And if not for Craft Fridays, I do suppose that we would have eventually gotten started on this podcast. But after starting Craft Fridays, we all realized how enjoyable, how much fun it is to be able to shoot podcasts with your buddies, over a few beers. Obviously, that's what started Craft Fridays in itself. And through that enjoyment and experience, we immediately decided to, get started on the Tattoo podcast as well. Just because it's a good time, I suppose. But with that being said, that's one project that we've already gotten started on fairly recently. I was going to see if you wanted to kind of give a little bit of a quick little rundown or gist of the past two events that you've had here at the studio and how they went. And
Okay. We do art shows, where we do a gallery opening, I should say, because we do display artwork from that specific show or that theme for 2 months or so, and then we'll put on another show, have another gallery opening. So the past few shows we've done, we had a winter-themed art show that opened on January 31st, and it was very very fitting because when we're here in Florida, we only get like 2 weeks of winter, and they don't come consecutively. So we happened to get 1 week of winter for that show, which was cool. Because the artwork itself was literally cool. It was all very, blue and whites and purples and kind of generally themed around winter. There was even some portrait paintings of just, kind of old, withered people with white hair in a stormy white setting, and just that feeling of cold and I guess sometimes winter can have that feeling of almost despair, I guess. So that was quite literally a cool show. And we had a decent turnout at that one. I think, throughout the night, people would come and go. I think we saw a total of 50 guests for that show. And then more recently, a few weeks ago, I personally put on a benefit art show. I'm trying to get custody of my son right now. and the lawyer fees for that are we're kind of piling up a little bit. And I had this idea to put together this benefit show and put a lot of my artwork up for auction. And I reached out to all of my friends, all of my artist friends, and kind of explain the situation to them and my idea for this show and to raise funds. And the turnout, the outpour from the artist community was amazing. We had submissions from I think 20 plus artists for a total of, I think there was 50, maybe even 53 pieces in the show or so. And for that show, it was just mixed artwork. I reached out to everybody. I let them know, hey, whatever artwork you have, if you want to make a piece for the show, or if you have something laying around that that you'd like to see it have a nice home for, whatever you can do. And so it was an amazing turnout, and I think we had 60 plus people to that show, which I was extremely grateful for. It was amazing. It was a silent auction, so everybody walked around and just placed their bids on each piece, and some people could be outbid, and so it's a good way to raise money, and everybody came to support not only the studio and obviously the cause, but to support the artists that donated the artwork as well. I know a lot of the artists that I reached out to, this was the first show that they, were having artwork in, and they were excited just to see kind of how people would react to their artwork. And I think, Pat, you had a couple pieces in this show, right?
A few of them, actually. It was the first time I had the ability to, because I'm used to usually painting on canvases too, but I wanted to be able to introduce some different types of media, so I actually got the opportunity to be able to paint a statue that I had found at a local Goodwill, and I just had such a great time being able to do that piece because it was a little bit of a different medium than I'm used to painting on. So, but yeah, I did a few pieces in that show. It was very awesome to be able to be a part of it as well too, and be able to see how much see how much everyone was able to give back to, and really come together to be able to help out such a good cause was not only very rewarding to see, but just what would be the word that I'm looking for? Just heartening,
inspiring. And,
Yeah.
It was definitely very, very heartfelt. overwhelming emotionally for me just to see that kind of support and that outpour from the community. But it was awesome, and those are the most recent shows that we've done at the studio. We had a scheduled show for the end of March, but we're running a little bit behind schedule. With tattooing full time and apprenticing and all the other projects that we work on, including the podcast and everything. It's hard to find time to plan, gallery openings sometimes. But the next one that we have scheduled, it will be probably sometime in April, or maybe even pushing it back to May this time. But we're going to be doing a themed gallery of create and destroy.
Mm-hmm.
So it's going to be one piece that embodies both creation and destruction, or two pieces that embody them separately and can contrast between creation and destruction, or show a link. Maybe that it shows, or which is whatever it really means to the artist. It's more of a prompt.
Mm-hmm.
And it'll be one submission, or two pieces from each artist, and a write-up about what the piece means or what their thought process behind it was.
Mm-hmm.
And that will be our first prompted show. The winter was more of a general broad theme. This one is a specific prompt where each artist is creating specifically for this show. And I'm hoping that we have some very different types of ideas when I love giving different artists a prompt and just let them have their way with it, and you really get to see how different artists' minds work.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's going to be a cool thing for this show. I don't want to give away too much, but I'm planning on doing a pretty large painting and quite literally destroying part of it.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll leave that to be vague.
Definitely, yeah. And I know a lot of people are looking forward to that. It's just a really fun topic to be able to, or I guess theme to be able to cover. Also, we had the availability to be able to go out to the two most recent motorcycle-related events. The first one being at Ace Cafe, and then the next one, what was it, the following day?
It was the following day. It was about a week ago. Saturday at Ace Cafe and Sunday at Orlando Harley Davidson.
Damn good time, by the way.
We were out
Damn
there
good time.
with Low Life Speedworks and
Florida as fuck as well too.
Florida as fuck, and East Coastin' crew. They're from Connecticut, actually close to where I lived in Connecticut for a while, and they were out there doing their motorcycle stunt show. It was the FXR Dyna Day stunt show for both, and they're out there doing their thing. We were out there with Homesick and set up, tent to sell the Florida as fuck T-shirts, and that went extremely well. Also, it was a lot of fun. Made new connections. Saw a lot of really amazing artwork on some of these motorcycles, and obviously the stunts they were doing.
Definitely. Also, shout out to the supervillains too for stopping by, showing so much support. We really appreciated that too. It was very cool hanging out with them, and it was definitely a very fun part of the evening, being able to go back and forth with that specific band. They're a big Florida local band, a lot of local support for them. I've been following them for a while, and being able to see someone who I've been following for a while also kind of follow us at the same time, is very appreciated. By us, I mean, obviously.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Florida is the company that we've been supporting for a little bit now, and definitely have high hopes for, and looking forward to continuing working with.
Yeah, it was a great time at those events, and we look forward to probably doing more motorcycle-related events as well. It's a great crowd. It's always a fun time. And so some other upcoming events and projects that we're working on. Oh, we're going to be painting our first mural. Patrick and I are painting our first mural in the office on the other side of this wall, actually. Pretty small office, but right now the walls are this awful wet sand color, which is just kind of dull and overwhelming in the little office that we have back there.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to be getting down to work on that over the next few weeks and coming up with some themes and ideas and putting together our first, I guess, mural. It'll be on 3 walls, this wall, the back wall, and then the other side.
Mm-hmm.
And hopefully the start of, possibly putting together more mural type pieces here in the future. I know, Pat, you have some experience with more large scale pieces, graffiti type stuff?
Definitely, yeah. Not only did I grow up doing specifically that type of artwork, as I'd mentioned a little bit earlier in the podcast, but it's specifically a type of artwork that I love doing more than anything else. Being able to do, massive pieces if I ever get the availability to. And right before I moved out to Oregon a few years ago, I was, I had a piece that was in the Orlando City Arts Project downtown. Ended up painting a lot of the skateboard ramps and equipment that they had used when they had blocked off a majority of downtown and made it into a skate park. And just being able to see the response from skaters and people passing by and how much they really enjoyed the artwork. It was just a very rewarding feeling. Made me want to continue being able to do murals, especially for events or anything that I have the ability to do.
I'm excited. I'm definitely excited to learn from you about doing some large scale artwork like that. And put our minds together creatively and come up with some fun stuff for that.
Definitely, and as soon as we get that going too, I'm sure we'll have some photos posted because it's going to be a big project that we're really looking forward to doing. I'm sure whenever we're done, it's going to be some pretty cool looking pieces.
Make sure to follow us on Instagram, Twitter at Homesick Tattoo FL, at Virgo Creative is my personal, and
my 2 Instagram names as well too would be Pat Bosk, at Pat Bosk, PatBosque, would be my specifically my tattoo artist Instagram name, or apprentice Instagram name I should say, and my other one being Party Wave Pat. It's pretty self-explanatory, but that'd be my personal page.
So make sure to give us a follow and look out for all the upcoming projects that we're talking about.
Yeah.
Always posting fun videos and stories on the gram.
And in addition to that too, and it's definitely a little bit early on, it's still without a doubt just a thought, an idea in the process, but we're also kind of dabbling in the idea of potentially putting on maybe even potentially haunted house for Halloween, it's still just a thought. It's by no means solidified yet, but the idea of being able to do that specifically would be so much fun, so much enjoyment, be able to set that up for Halloween.
That was a fun idea. I know we talked a little bit about that. Yeah, a homesick haunted house. Maybe I feel like there's a lot of opportunity for impressive artwork that goes into that. There's definitely a craft and an art into scaring people with the makeup and the acting, and definitely some fun stuff to play around with. We've got about 1,100 square feet in here, so I think we could set it up to be at least a pretty intense 3 to 5 minute walkthrough scare, if we set it up properly.
Definitely.
Fun idea for sure.
Yeah, be able to reach out to the community. Obviously, with this specific type of industry, you want to be able to definitely let your surrounding community know that you're. What's what I'm looking for?
That we're present. We're here. We have events. We're active in the art community. But anyway, I think we're getting ready to wrap this up here, and if you guys have watched this far, thank you so much for tuning in to the first episode of Patty and Mike on the mic, or Tattoo Talk, or whatever we decide. We're going to come up with something good. Don't worry.
Yeah. Thanks for listening.